The winter drizzle streaked across the windshield of my 8-year-old Honda Accord as I eased into my parents' sprawling coastal estate in Newport, Rhode Island. The circular driveway glittered under the soft glow of lantern lights, already lined with sleek imports. My brother Daniel's brand-new Maserati was front and center, while my sister Isabelle's white Tesla Model X caught the light like a pearl. I glanced at my reflection in the rearview mirror, smoothing the lapel of my charcoal gray wrap dress, a simple piece that had cost less than the cufflinks Daniel wore on his worst days. To them, I was Claire Donovan, the 33-year-old underachiever who settled for running a boutique marketing firm instead of taking a seat at Donovan Capital, the family's decades-old private equity powerhouse. What they didn't know was that Donovan Creative was a carefully maintained facade cover for my real venture, Mariner Global, a holding company that had quietly acquired two of my father's largest rivals in the last 18 months. My modest office suite downtown was merely one floor in the 20-story building I owned outright. The heavy oak doors swung open before I reached the bell. Marcus, our longtime butler who had served the Donovans for nearly 40 years, stood there with a faint smile. "Miss Claire," he said warmly. He was one of only a handful of people who knew the truth. "Still driving that old thing, little sister?" Daniel's voice carried from the foyer as I handed Marcus my damp trench coat. He stood there in a perfectly tailored navy suit, a tumbler of whiskey in hand, his smirk as practiced as his handshake. "You know," he added, "if you came back to the family business, I could set you up with something respectable." I thought of my underground garage across town home to a Ferrari Portofino, a vintage Jaguar E-Type, and my pride, a midnight blue Rolls-Royce Dawn. "The Honda gets me where I need to go," I said lightly, following him into the formal dining room. Tonight was the annual winter dinner, a tradition my father had started when he stepped back from day-to-day operations 5 years ago. Ironically, the same week I'd quietly closed my first major takeover. My mother air-kissed my cheeks, her sapphire earrings flashing under the chandelier. "We were just discussing Daniel's latest triumph," she said, "the Westbrook account." I smiled faintly. The Westbrook deal had been mine, secured through a web of shell corporations before Daniel ever got wind of it. He had picked up what was left, convinced he'd orchestrated brilliance. "Impressive," I murmured, taking my place at the long mahogany table, while Isabelle launched into a glowing account of her latest charity gala. "You should have been there, Claire," Isabelle said, pausing her account of the charity gala. "Though I suppose these events are rather expensive." Her eyes flicked over my understated silver necklace and modest earrings, her pity thinly disguised. If only she knew. Half the gala's funding had come from one of my private foundations anonymously. The other half? From the profit of a single day's market trading. At the head of the table, my father still commanded the room, even in semi-retirement. "Danielle tells me your marketing business is stable," he said, drawing out the last word as though it were a shortfall. "The offer to join Donovan Capital still stands," he added. "Even in a junior position, you'd do better than struggling on your own." I thought of the meeting on my calendar for tomorrow morning, where I'd be signing the final documents to acquire Donovan Capital's largest remaining competitor. The deal would be public by next week, sending ripples through the financial press and shaking the ground my family stood on. "I'm comfortable where I am, Dad," I said, accepting a glass of wine from Marcus. He met my eyes with a subtle, knowing smile. It had been Marcus who first tipped me off 5 years ago about my father's risky investments that threatened the family's fortune. "Comfortable," Daniel repeated with a snort. "That rust bucket you drive says otherwise. When's the last time you even had it serviced?" "Speaking of service," Isabelle chimed in, "my new driver is incredible. Ex-military, trained in evasive maneuvers. Far better than dealing with traffic yourself, Claire. Though I suppose a driver's salary might be beyond your means." My fingers brushed the phone in my pocket. One message to Tomas, my head of security, and a fleet of luxury vehicles with professional drivers could be at the gate in minutes. "The Honda gets me where I need to go," I said mildly, watching Daniel roll his eyes. "Where you need to go?" he laughed. "The only place that car belongs is the junkyard. Honestly, I'm embarrassed to have it in our driveway." Daniel, my mother scolded half-heartedly, be nice to your sister. Not everyone can be as successful as you. The irony almost made me choke on my wine. Last quarter, Mariner Global had earned more in a week than Donovan Capital had in a year. While Daniel played at being a mogul, I was quietly shaping the global financial map. I hear the Mariner building is under new ownership, my father said suddenly, frowning. Some mysterious international firm. We tried to bid on it, but they wouldn't even take our calls. Mariner Global, Daniel supplied, straightening his tie. Nobody knows much about them. Very secretive operation. But don't worry, Dad. I'm working on a plan to compete with them. And if you're ready to see the moment their perfect little world collides with the truth, make sure you're subscribed because the real reveal is just getting started. I hid my smile behind the rim of my wine glass. The Mariner building had been my very first major acquisition, secured through a maze of shell companies. The quiet satisfaction of knowing Donovan Capital now paid rent to me was one of life's finer ironies. Claire, my mother said suddenly, interrupting my thoughts. What's that smile about? Have you met someone? You know, Daniel's friend Marcus is still single. Just enjoying the wine, I replied, appreciating the vintage for what it truly was. A $10,000 bottle. Marcus had quietly swapped in place of the mid-range label Daniel had bragged about supplying. Our butler caught my eye as he set down the first course. A subtle grin threatened to surface on his otherwise neutral face. He'd once been my grandmother's most trusted employee, and she had taught him to recognize real business instinct when he saw it. When she passed, she left me her worthless old diaries. Pages that turned out to be detailed ledgers of hidden investments, secret accounts, and strategic plays decades ahead of their time. Only Marcus and I had understood their worth. Well, Daniel declared, raising his glass, here's to another record year at Donovan Capital. Though some of us, his smirk landed squarely on me, will just have to celebrate small victories, like keeping that old Honda running for another month. My phone buzzed against my leg. A message from my CFO confirming that tomorrow's acquisition was fully greenlit. By this time next week, the financial press would be buzzing with the revelation of Mariner Global's latest move, and the Donovans would learn that real power doesn't always pull up in a Maserati. To small victories, I said evenly, raising my glass and catching Marcus's knowing glance. Outside, the winter rain tapped against the leaded windows, while my junk, Honda, sat obediently in the driveway, still playing its role in an elaborate charade that was about to end with fireworks. Dinner rolled on with its usual rhythm, a delicate symphony of polite jabs and backhanded compliments orchestrated by my siblings. I stayed composed, scanning discreet updates flashing across my phone. Tomorrow's news cycle was already being primed. You're quiet tonight, Claire, Isabelle observed, slicing into her seared halibut. Usually you at least try to contribute something about your, what do you call it, boutique marketing practice? Before I could respond, Daniel leaned in. Speaking of consulting, one of our junior analysts swears they saw you at the Preston Hotel last week. Don't tell me you're actually landing serious clients now. I remembered that day well. A closed-door meeting with the board of Asia's largest investment firm. Not that Daniel needed to know Mariner Global was about to expand its empire. Just a small project, I said lightly, taking another sip of the wine Marcus had so perfectly substituted. Dad's brows lifted. That's ambitious for your level, Claire. The Preston's suites run thousands per night. Please tell me you're not getting in over your head. I thought about the reality how I owned the Preston Hotel Group outright, along with a network of luxury properties across 3 continents. That small project had been finalizing a $2 billion acquisition over lunch in my private penthouse suite. My phone buzzed again. A message from Thomas, my head of security. All preparations complete for tomorrow. The Rolls-Royce Dawn and full fleet are on standby. Shall we proceed with Phase 1? I typed back a quick yes while Daniel launched into another self-congratulatory story about his latest brilliant investment strategy. Ironically, it was a move I'd spoon-fed to him through a third party, knowing it would keep Donovan Capital occupied while I closed on their real target. Oh, that reminds me, Mom said brightly. Daniel, tell Claire about your new car collection. Maybe you can help her upgrade from that Honda situation. Daniel's eyes lit up. Just added a limited edition Ferrari to the garage. Only 10 made worldwide. He scrolled through photos on his phone. That makes 7 luxury cars now. Not that you'd understand the appeal, Claire, given your practical approach to transportation. I thought of my own private collection of 43 rare and luxury vehicles, including 3 of those same Ferraris. The very ones Daniel had been chasing for years, but could never find available. 7 cars? Isabelle looked genuinely impressed. That's incredible, Daniel, though, of course, when you're as successful as you are. Marcus appeared at my side, refilling my wineglass with his usual discretion. Miss Claire, he murmured so only I could hear. Everything is in place for tomorrow's announcement. The financial press is standing by. I gave a faint nod. At exactly 9 a.m., every major financial outlet would break the news that Mariner Global had acquired Donovan Capital's largest competitor, along with 3 other market leaders. The business world would finally meet the once mysterious CEO of Mariner Global. Really, Claire? Dad said, pulling me back to the table. That car of yours is becoming a liability. What if clients see it? Image matters in business. Speaking of image, Daniel added with a smirk, I noticed your car leaking oil in the driveway. Honestly, it's embarrassing having it parked next to mine. Why don't you at least park it around back? Daniel's voice was dripping with amusement. Something in me snapped. 5 years of keeping this facade, smiling through their condescension, pretending to be less than I was, crystallized into one moment of clarity. I slipped my phone from my clutch and typed a short message to Thomas. Bring the fleet, all of them. What are you doing? Isabelle asked, catching my faint smile. Ordering an Uber because the Honda finally gave up? She teased. Not exactly, I replied, just as Marcus reappeared in the doorway. Miss Claire, he announced formally, loud enough for the entire table to hear. Your cars have arrived. The confusion that rippled across their faces was delicious. Cars? Daniel scoffed. What cars? Then came the unmistakable sound. Multiple engines, deep and powerful, purring in perfect sync. Through the dining room's floor-to-ceiling windows, we watched a procession turn into the circular driveway. First, the midnight blue Rolls-Royce Dawn, paintwork glistening even under the winter rain. Behind it, a Bentley Continental GT, an Aston Martin DB11, and a Mercedes Maybach, each pulling up with military precision. The color drained from Daniel's face as he caught sight of a rare Ferrari, identical to his, except in a custom shade he'd been told was impossible to source. One by one, more vehicles appeared, each rarer and more extravagant than the last, until the driveway looked like a private concours d'élégance. What is this? Dad stammered, pushing back his chair to stand. My cars, Dad, I said evenly. Well, some of them. The rest wouldn't fit in the driveway. Impossible, Daniel muttered, pressing closer to the glass. These cars, they belong to Mariner Global, I finished for him. More specifically, they belong to its CEO. I let the pause stretch until the air felt heavy. The silence that followed was absolute. Isabelle's fork slipped from her hand, clattering onto her plate. Mom's hand went instinctively to her pearls. Dad slowly lowered himself back into his chair. Marcus, I said, without looking away from them, I think it's time for that special bottle from my private cellar. The butler's face lit up with the broadest smile I'd seen in years. Right away, Miss Claire. The Romani Conti 1945, I presume? The one valued at $558,000? Daniel choked on his wine. The bottle he'd been bragging about earlier suddenly felt laughable. You're Mariner Global? Dad's voice was barely a whisper. The company acquiring everything in sight? The one that owns the Mariner building? And the Preston hotels, I said. And about 60% of the companies Daniel thinks he's competing with. Oh, and that gala you were talking about, Isabelle? I funded it. Anonymously, of course. Thomas appeared in the doorway, flawless in his tailored black suit. Miss Donovan, your Rolls-Royce awaits. Shall I have the others returned to the garage? The garage? Daniel repeated weakly. My private collection facility, I explained. 43 cars at last count, though I usually prefer to keep things practical. I glanced toward the driveway, where my 8-year-old Honda sat in quiet defiance, the perfect disguise for a woman who had spent 5 years building an empire in secret. Why? Mom finally managed, her voice thin. Why hide all this? I walked to the window, watching the rain bead across the immaculate curves of the fleet outside. Because 5 years ago, when I proposed modernizing Donovan Capital, you laughed me out of the boardroom. Dad said I lacked business instincts. Daniel said I should stick to small projects. So I decided to show you exactly what my business instincts could do, just not under the Donovan name. The Mariner Building? Dad's voice trailed off, realization dawning. The acquisitions. The mysterious competition. All this time? It was you? All this time, I confirmed. And tomorrow at 9 a.m. the whole world will know. Mariner Global will announce its latest acquisition. Which company? Daniel asked, though the color draining from his face told me he already knew. I smiled, recalling the years of subtle jabs about my car, my career, my supposed limitations. All of them, dear brother. Every major competitor Donovan Capital has left. By tomorrow afternoon, your stock will drop by half. Dad leaned forward, his dinner untouched. Unless you're ready to discuss a merger, I said evenly. On my terms, of course. The rain kept falling, haloing the headlights of the luxury cars lined in the driveway, and there, in the middle of it all, sat my faithful old humble, unassuming, and absolutely intentional. Quiet reminder that real power doesn't need to flaunt itself. It can wait, it can build, and when the time is right, it can arrive with a fleet. If you've followed me this far, you already know this wasn't about cars, money, or even revenge. It was about proving to them and to myself that quiet persistence can outlast arrogance, and that you don't need applause to build something extraordinary. I want you to be part of this journey with me. Tell me what you think of how I handled it. Did I wait too long? Was I too subtle? Or did I time it just right? Your comments matter. They're not just feedback. They're proof that there are others out there who value strategy over showmanship, patience over instant gratification. And here's my advice. Never underestimate the value of keeping your plans close until the results are undeniable. The world will try to measure you by what it can see, your car, your clothes, your title, but real strength is in what they can't see until it's too late for them to stop you. Build in silence, invest in yourself, and when the moment comes, step forward without flinching. If you want to see what happens next, and trust me, it's bigger than a fleet in the driveway, make sure you're subscribed. You won't want to miss the next move.